This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to class, people. So this class is about the new guideline. As you already know, the sepsis guideline has been updated. So I'll be just explaining the guideline. In between, I have put a few questions. Okay. So try to make the things easy. And if any issue is question is there, you guys can ask me. Okay. So first, what is sepsis? So sepsis is defined as a life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by dysregulated host response to infection. It can be a clinical syndrome caused by a body immune system and the coagulation profile. Like the body immune system and the system both are activated by infection. These are three definitions. Uh, you may get this as question. So definition for sepsis. Sepsis is like when there is an infection, and along with that the systemic manifestation of infection is also there. So that would be sepsis. Severe sepsis, when sepsis plus sepsis induced organ dysfunction or tissue hypoperfusion is there. Okay. Now septic shock, it would be a condition where the persistent state of hypoperfusion in spite the adequate fluid replacement therapy. These definitions would be important to know because they can be a stem of your SBA questions. Difference between sepsis, severe sepsis, and septic shock. Then why the sepsis? This is from the previous talk, that is the sepsis in the pregnancy. Now there are so many changes in the pregnancy. There are so many changes in the all cardiovascular, respiratory, renal, and the coagulation profile system is there. Because of that, this could be the cumulative effect of sepsis in the pregnancy. So like cardiovascular, there is like rapid hemodynamic collapse. So, in the respiratory system, they have got high susceptibility to pulmonary edema, rapid fall in oxygen, ARDS syndrome, and disability to compensate for metabolic acidosis because pregnancy is a itself causes hyperventilation. There could be renal effect. It can cause acute kidney injury. In the coagulation, there could be microvascular thrombus formation, microcircular dysregulation, tissue hypoperfusion. Because of that, there would be end organ dysfunction. Okay, so minimum this much knowledge you guys should have. So if they ask some time in the exam or to understand the topic also. Now, just a small question. So, sepsis is a cause of maternal death globally. So, how many percentages are death are corresponding to sepsis? Anyone can do a guess. Any guess?
Ma'am, C. Is it C?
11%. Okay, another question. Death from primary infective cause. Overall mortality rate for the sepsis. As per this new guideline, what is the answer? Any guess could also be there. Otherwise, I will tell you. So it is 2.5.
Ma'am, is it? Okay, okay. All right, ma'am.
Yes, yes. B, it is 2.5 per thousand maternities. The small questions I just keep, that helps you remembering the number because they could be important for your exam. Now, what is the WHO definition of the sepsis? Life-threatening condition that causes defined as organ dysfunction resulting from infection during pregnancy, childbirth, post-abortion, and postpartum period. So this is the, like previously what I discussed. This is the definition of the sepsis by RCOG guideline, and this is the WHO definition of sepsis. So if any time they ask you a question about the definition only. Now the septic shock. So what is septic shock? Why we are worried? Because in septic shock there would be tissue persisting hypotension, along with the cellular and metabolic abnormalities. What really happened? There would be hypotension that would require vasopressor therapy in form of adrenaline, non-adrenaline, and dopamine. All these things they require vasopressor therapy to maintain adequate blood pressure. That is the 65 millimeters of mercury or more. Apart from this, lactate level, either venous or arterial, will be more than 2 millimole per liter despite adequate volume resuscitation. So if these conditions are followed, then you will say that the patient is having the septic shock. Now septic shock has got three stages: early, late, early or warm, late and cold, secondary or irreversible shock. So this
Ma'am,
is,
I have a doubt over here.
yes.
Should I ask after the session, or can
No, no,
I
you
ask
can
now?
ask. You can ask.
In the previous slide which you showed, ma'am, over here the lactate level, like you have mentioned, it's 2 millimoles per liter. But
Hmm.
I think, ma'am, in the last guideline it was given as 4, and in the new update they have given 2 in one place and 4 in another place. So I got a little confused.
See, if the lactate is more than 2, then it will be like despite persistently it is there more than 2, then the patient is going toward shock. But if it is more than 4, then the patient is having severe kind of sepsis.
Okay, so 4 is diagnostic mostly, and 2 is
4 is more severe.
okay. It is a severe septic shock. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So this is a just a small enumeration that what would be the clinical states and the features. So for first stage is the early or the warm stage, where the patient have warm skin and a flushing, temperature instability. And why it happens? Because of the decreased peripheral resistance, vasodilatation, and increased cardiac output. After that, like these are the early features. Then there would become the late features, where the patient's skin become cold, so the patient becomes cool and clammy. There would be oliguria, cyanosis, ARDS, DS sets in. Why it happens? Pathophysiology is peripheral vasoconstriction, decrease output, and increase peripheral resistance. And irreversible shock or secondary shock, when the patient shows these features like anuria, hypoglycemia, DIC, and myocardial failure. Okay, this happens because of the peripheral dilatation, decrease cardiac output, and decrease peripheral resistance. Okay, so this is like these stages of the septic shock I have put from the strategy. Okay, if any question ask about the stages, and if they give you scenario, then you will be able to identify that which stage of septic shock it is going on. Now another, okay, so just tell me that what could be the risk, what is not the risk factor for maternal sepsis? Any query, any guess?
E, ma'am, single
Yes.
pregnancy.
So this is from the guideline only. So these are the obstetric causes of the obstetric risk factor for the maternal sepsis. Now all this it is understandable, but multiple gestation, it is a risk factor for sepsis. That is a new identity because it was not mentioned earlier guidelines that the multiple pregnancy is a risk factor for sepsis. Okay, so maybe because of the hemodynamic changes are too much, so response to infection is less. Apart from this, they could, so these could be the reasons why they are more common in multiple gestation. Okay, so I put the question so that it remembers, it remains retains in the head. Now these are the risk factor for the maternal sepsis during pregnancy and the postpartum. They have divided into two parts. These are the maternal risk factors and the obstetric risk factors. Maternal risk factor is obesity. We know BMI is a high risk factor. Diabetes we already know. Iron deficiency, anemia we know. Now maternal is more like more than 35. This is the new identity that the age is also a risk factor that you should be aware of, because they make ask question from this line. Impaired immunity, we knew that patient has got any renal, cardiac, liver condition or any chronic disease, history of PID, contact with like gas, that is or IV drug abuser. So these are the common risk factor. We knew them, but the age more than 30, age like less than age, maternal age more than 35 is also a risk factor. So now age has also come in the risk factor. Apart from these obstetric factors, we already know rupture of membrane, any birth trauma, retained products of conception, a cesarean section, any invasive procedure like amniocentesis, multiple gestation that we already did in the question and the circlage. And the pregnant women, they are 20 times more at a risk of gas infection and 80-fold more risk up to 28 days of pregnancy. Okay, so risk factor, now it would be for part 2 people, you can get a question directly from here. Apart from this, for part 3 people, when you are taking history for any kind of infection patient, then you have to bring this risk factor in your information gathering. And these days too much part 3 tasks are coming about the sepsis and the chorioamnitis. It has become like commonly asked in part 3 also. Apart from this, what are the organism? Now these were the risk factors. After risk factor, we move to the organism that cause septicemia. So this is a table that is given in the guideline. So E. coli 37%, then GBS we already know, Staphylococcus aureus, the group A beta hemolytic streptococcus, that is gas, that is that causes too much of infections in the postpartum woman. Then all these are there. So now E. coli or coliform bacteria is usually associated with urinary tract infections. They causes urinary sepsis and they are responsible for causing pre-prom and infection in the cerclage patients. Now PVL producing MRSA is responsible for maternity outbreak. Now MRSA is methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. This and what is this PVL? This PVL is a pore forming cytotoxin that is produced by some clones of Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, because of this Staphylococcus aureus, it produces this cytotoxin. Because of that, it causes too much of infections. Usually, they could be uncomplicated skin infection or even life-threatening necrotizing pneumonia. So much can be caused by PVL producing MRSA. Okay, so vertical transmission can occur because of the vaginal colonization, and PVL producing staphylococci usually associated with mastitis and breast abscesses. Okay. Apart from this E. coli, that is a gram negative, they some variety of them will be producing this beta lactamases, and this extended spectrum beta lactamases, and these are the enzymes they usually know. You know that we used to read in our MBBS days that the beta lactam antibiotics are there. The penicillin is like the one of them, and penicillin has got that beta lactam ring is there. So these bacteria, they causes destruction of destruction of the they destroys that beta lactam ring. Because of that, the beta lactam group of antibiotics, they are not effective in these kind of organism. Okay, so this is just a basic knowledge that you should be aware of. Apart from this, in Enterobacteriaceae, the carbapenemase producing bacteria are there. They could be in the gut or they could be present in the vagina. They can pass as a carrier to the baby. This ESBL render more cephalosporin ineffective. The reason I have already told, because they have got this ESBL enzymes that causes the breakage of the beta lactam ring. and CPE render this like this enzyme, they render a carbapenem group of antibiotics ineffective. So if the outbreaks are there from this MRSA, from this ESBL producing bacteria, that time you have to kind of use the higher group of antibiotics. Now this gas, this is commonly it causes postpartum infection. So usually it appears like this, may be associated causing endometritis, myonecrosis, peritonitis, and streptococcal toxic shock syndrome. Now a few things also you should know that whatever the infection that occurs in pregnancy, it is much more rapid as compared to the non pregnant women. Apart from this, staphylococcus and streptococcus, they produces exotoxins. Because of that, there could be nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and shock sinus toxic shock syndrome could be there, TSS. Apart from this, they are also responsible for causing necrotizing fasciitis that develop in the background of inflammation and watery vaginal discharge, suggest hemolytic streptococci. Now, streptococcal discharge would be watery, and like staphylococcus discharge usually thick, it is pus like. Okay. Now, this is the picture of necrotizing fasciitis, and why I have put this picture, basically I have put it for the part three people, because when they give you post operative ward round, many of the time they give a scenario that has post necrotizing fasciitis, and then the examiner will give you what are the margins of the skin, but the people they are not able to identify because they have not read it very nicely. Okay, so this way the necrotizing fasciitis will look like. Sunburn rash and the conjunctival suggest toxic sinus syndrome because of the Staphylococcus aureus. So this is the typical sunburn rash you can see, and this is usually occurs in the infection that is caused by the Staphylococcus aureus. Apart from this, like viral infection can also present with the sepsis, influenza, COVID, and disseminated HSV. HSV is rare, but there could be in encephalitis and like rarely febrile hepatitis. So this could viral infection could also be there. Now, what could be the site of infections? Now, when the patient present to us, then from the site of infection, there should be some clinical feature at the time of presentation. Few things you should be aware of, like if the how the meningitis and the meningoencephalitis will present, how you will basically identify. The patient usually has a neck stiffness. Okay, you guys might have seen there is a neck stiffness, and apart from this there could be it can affect brain, so there could be conscious level may be altered, there could be delirium, there could be focal seizures also, photophobia. Okay. Now ENT infection if occurs, there could be like ear ache, that is very common. There could be muffled hearing. Okay, even the hearing can be affected. This discharge and the facial pain, sore throat, and cervical lymphadenopathy, everyone knows that. But muffled hearing and a hoarseness of voice, this could also be the like presenting symptom or clinical features of ENT infection. In chest, if the infection occurs, usually the patient have got like pleuritic pain. So when you kind of see the patient would complain of pain. And if the cardiac infection occur, all of a sudden there would be a murmur, and this would be like a regurgitant murmur. And apart from this, there could be splinter hemorrhages and Janvey's lesions. Okay, these are the characteristics of the infective endocarditis. If the if the infection occurs there. Cholecystitis, we already know how it presents: right upper quadrant pain, and the Murphy sign will be positive for the cholecystitis. For like appendicitis, we already know that the McBurney sign will be positive. Okay. Now, if there had been an bowel inflammation, you will find distension, acute abdomen distension, tenderness and rigidity and guarding, along with the sepsis symptoms. Now, if the breast infection occurs, you sometimes breast there could be non-infective mastitis. They could lead to breast abscess, necrotizing fasciitis, and the toxic shock syndromes. So, breast would be in pain, inflamed. There could be pain, bruising. If it is there, then this will suggest that the deeper infection in the skin has happened. Possibility of necrotizing fasciitis. Urinary tract infection, usually it presents with the loin pain, back pain, dysuria, hematuria. These are the signs of UTI and the pyelonephritis. Now, regional anesthetic blockade related to infection, there could be the spinal abscess. Okay, so spinal abscess, the patient will have back pain, headache, photophobia, and whatever the focal injury that happens because of this abscess, there could be that particular signs could be there, and permanent, it may damage the spinal cord. Then the cauda equina damage may result if the neural compression is not relieved urgently, mostly though it is not very common kind of condition. But sometimes because there's so much of spinal anesthesia is used, so many of the times there could be hematoma and abscess formation, and the patient will deteriorate very fast unless the decompression is done. There could be permanent damage. Okay, wound infection, there could be toxic shock syndromes, and there could be rash and the conjunctival redness. Just I showed you the picture that usually happen the Staphylococcus aureus infection. Necrotizing fasciitis, I have already shown the picture, but this part again you have to remember. You will this is common scenario that come in part 2 and part 3. So the patient would have you will find a scenario that the patient is having an agonizing pain, lot more analgesics are given, and the patient is not responding. Initially, when you will see, there would be no skin change, but later on there could be blisters. Okay, so sometimes the keyword in your answer would be blister, and the frank necrosis occurs. That means the bluish blackish margin of the skin wound will be there. So this part you have to kind of remember, because many question even in part 2 MRCOG, part 1 EBCOG, part 3 MRCOG, this necrotizing fasciitis scenario usually comes. Then sometime what happens that uh, patient will show the symptoms of sepsis, but actually the patient is not having sepsis. It could be the non-infective cause that usually mimics like sepsis, like blood transfusion can cause pyrexia and rash, autoimmune disease, fatty liver of pregnancy, malignancy disseminated may cause pyrexia, a TTP may cause acute renal failure, thrombocytopenia, pyrexia. Occult bleeding may cause raised lactate, shock, and hypothermia. Even the epidural fever, we have seen that the reactionary fever occur, but this is usually with a symptomatic treatment goes off. Misoprostol has got one very common side effect that the patient who you will give misoprostol, they will develop fever after some time. Okay, so these are non-infective causes that gives a symptom that you will think of sepsis, but actually the sepsis is not there. Okay, so what are the which of the following is not a red flag for sepsis? Anyone, any question? Which is not the red flag? Any one person can answer? At least one guess? Okay, no one want to answer, not an issue. So this is the like heart rate more than 110. It has to be like more than 130. So main idea is that you should remember what are the red flag signs, though not so red flag signs. Now in this guideline, the sign and symptoms or signs of the sepsis has divided into two parts. These are the red flags and the amber flags, and the management will be according to these stratification of the risk according to this signs only. Okay. Now what are the red flag signs? So like a patient will have got GCS, Glasgow Coma Scale, that will be less than 15. Respiratory rate is more than 25. Saturation is less than 94% in the room air. Tachycardia, like heart rate, should be more than 130, and systolic blood pressure is less than 90, and the patient has not passed urine, that means the oliguria is happening in last 12 hours, or less than zero point 0.5 ml per uh, kilogram urine per hour. Okay, so these are the red flag signs, and you have to kind of remember this only. I'll just repeat it again. So red flags: GCS less than like 15, and respiratory rate is more than 25 or equal to, oxygen saturation is less than 94% in the room air, tachycardia more than 130, systolic is blood pressure less than 90, and the patient hasn't passed urine 12 hours, or if or it is like less than zero point 0.5 ml per kilogram urine per hour, or another identity sometime you get, it will be less than 30 ml per hour. So these are the red flag for the sepsis. Okay, and if the red flag now in UK, the patients would be in the community also. If the red flags are there, then usually they has to be referred by the blue light transfers. So like they transfer patient from here one place to another place according to the level of urgency. uh, the transfers are there, and blue light transfer is very emergency transfer. Now amber flags, so these are the amber flag signs. It is very hard to kind of remember, but at least you have to know these amber flag signs. uh, if the amber flag signs are there, then the usually senior clinical review should be within 1 hour for inpatient, and as soon as possible in the community. Now for respiratory rate, if it is in between 21 to 24, that is amber. um, Heart rate is 100 to 130 is a amber sign, or any new dysrhythmia is there. Okay, that is again amber sign. Systolic blood pressure, it is 91 to 100. In red, it was less than 90. Urine output, patient has not passed urine in 12 hour, or if catheterized, the urine is less than zero point 0.5 to 1 ml per kilogram per hour. Apart from this, like patient has got patient has got invasive procedure in last 6 weeks: cesarean, miscarriage, circular, CVS, immunocentesis, termination or miscarriage. So these are the again amber flag sign. Apart from this, impaired immune system, if the patient is taking oral steroids, temperature like hypotension and hypertension, hypothermia and hyperthermia, both are amber flag sign, like less than 36 degrees Celsius and more than 38 degrees Celsius, both will come in the sepsis, and it will be the again amber flag sign. Now the patient is close contact with gas. If anyone having scarlet fever, gas infection, or tonsillitis, if the contact is there with the case in the household setting, 7 days prior to onset of illness, if the any person develops this, and a person is in the contact 7 days prior, so that will be again the amber flag sign. Rupture of membrane 12 to 18 to 24 hours. Apart from this, prolonged vaginal discharge, and post birth, and the offensive vaginal discharge. So these are the amber flag signs. At least you guys remember it for one time or two time. So if any question comes, that you will be able to identify the amber flag. But the red flag sign, only 5 are there, that you have to kind of remember. Now this is again given in the guideline. So these are the red flag that we already did, and and this, but here in the red flag they have all also added like non-balancing rash, mortal ashen, and cyanotic. Okay, and these are the amber flag signs. So that this is the summary that kind of we just what we read here, same they have put here. These are the amber flag sign. Okay, so this make this guy putting the red flag in this tables and amber flag here, it becomes a little easy to remember. Let me enumerate again. Red flag signs, like when any altered mental state or GCS less than 15, systolic blood pressure is less than 90 or a drop 40 from normal, heart rate more than equal to 130 per minute, respiratory rate more than equal to 25 per minute, oxygen saturation, like more oxygen is required to maintain the saturation for 92%, and the lactate is more than 2 or equal to or more than 2 millimole per liter. Apart from this, not passed urine in 18 hours. Okay, so these are the like red flag signs, and these are the amber flag signs. Deterioration in mental care, functional ability, respiratory rate 21 to 24, heart rate 100 to 129, or new dysrhythmia is there, systolic blood pressure 91 to 100, any invasive procedure in last 6 weeks, and temperature less than 36, but here you should also put more than 38, previous any diabetes, contact with gas people, or prolonged rupture of membrane, bleeding or wound infection, offensive discharge, fetal tachycardia more than 160, and any behavioral change. So these are the signs that you have to kind of remember only. Now they have this is the sepsis stratification tool. Even previously also we used to read this, but it was not there in the guideline. So this is basically now this is the sepsis screening tool acute assessment. So they are checking at the red flag sign, or they're checking for the amber flag sign. If the red flag signs are there, that we already just read, then they will start with the sepsis 6 protocol. If any amber signs are there, then further review is required. As we already read, that they say that the people with the amber sign has to be seen within 1 hour. So what they review is required in that, so they will send the bloods, they will ensure the clinical review and time of review and antibiotics required, yes or no. So these are the kind of information they will be this type of management they will be doing. Basically, the amber flag sign, they will take bloods, they will do the senior review and see whether the antibiotics are required or not. Okay, so this way, like, they will check for the alerts, and they will according to the stratification, they will start with the treatment. Now, what are the appropriate triggers or features that led to prompt hospital from the community? Like, if any sepsis is suspected, urgent escalation and referral to hospital. It if the woman with sepsis is there, should be managed with the MDT approach. Proper observation of all vital signs are done, and usually they are put in the news monitoring, and the communication is done with the SBAR communication tool. SBAR communication tool is a tool of communication in UK for any kind of communication. Now, when the patient comes, what kind of suspicion could be there, what could be the symptoms, and what could be the history to be taken. So basically, like, I put these like slides in the same pattern they are given in the guideline, so that revision becomes easy for you people. Though we have already read the, like, what could be the infections, site of infection and what could be the clinical presentation. But the history is given later in the guideline, so I also put history later. Okay. Now though it is very hard to like know all this, but yes, it is important because sepsis is very important and any kind of questions can be asked. Now if the patient is having febrile illness and they're presenting with the chills, rigor, or myalgia, there could be like gram positive staphylococcal or streptococcal bacteremia. There could be associated gram negative infection. Basically, gram negative like E. coli is there. It happens if the recent urinary catheterization is there. If seasonal thing is there, then flu could be there. Apart from this, other infection could also be there, like COVID or adenoviral enteroviral infection. This part is important. If any scenario tells you any history of foreign travel, then consideration for malaria, viral hemorrhagic fevers, and other high risk fever to be taken in account. So if you get in your question where your they say that the patient has traveled or something like that, then please don't forget to mention this possible causes for malaria, hemorrhagic, and the viral hemorrhagic fevers. Okay, because in UK these kind of infections are not there. Usually, when the people they travel out to the endemic countries, then this kind of infection could be there. Okay, so you have to take care of when they ask give you this kind of information of travel in the your question. Contact with gas. Now a patient, a person who already has got this gas infection, and if the contact is there, then what could be there? So this could be there. I have already shown the picture of group A streptococcus aureus, that is gas. So it can cause small skin infection to large scale infection causing toxic sinus syndrome. So they could be like impetigo, tonsillitis, cellulitis. There could be rapid deterioration, and if there is a like pain that is out of proportion to the infection that you see, then you have to think of necrotizing fasciitis. In Apart from this, it may also cause uterus myonecrosis, because this causes endometritis, so it may cause uterus myonecrosis and gas peritonitis. Apart from this, PVL producing S. aureus, as I already told you, that PVL producing S. aureus, they are very notorious for causing recurrent skin infections and basically breast abscesses, boils, and the recurrent infection. So in your exam, if you get this kind of question that there is a recurrent infections or recurrent boils or abscess, and they want to like ask about the organism, answer will be PBL producing S or yes. Okay. Respiratory infection with hemoptysis. Now the patient having so much of infection in the respiration that the cavitation is there and the blood is there in the sputum. So you have to think of tuberculosis and necrotizing pneumonia PVL producing. But tuberculosis is not common in UK. This is so most commonly answer in your questions will be necrotizing pneumonia PVL producing. Okay, so this part you have to from these lines usually the questions have come. Now, apart from this, if your patient is, if in the history, if urinary symptoms are there, you have to think of this E. coli form, and usually you need to check sensitivity for ESBL and CPE histories there or not. Now, acute urinary retention, you already know it is if a young person is coming and having a sexual exposure, and that time if the patient present with a urinary retention with the blisters, most likely simplex you are dealing with. This is again a common question that comes. Herpes simplex cause autonomic neuropathy. Because of that, the patient would have paresthesia, sacral pain, and also automatic urinary retention would be there. This kind of from this also many times you will find questions. Okay. Now coming to the sometime they will give you IV drug abuser. Then usually mostly they have got septic emboli, vasculitis lesions, or endocarditis stigma could be there. And usually what causes them would be gas, would be MRSA, would be S. aureus, S. aureus and the gas infection. In this, the patient who are using IV drugs, so these infections, these are like they usually happens with the needle sharing. HIV, hepatitis C, and hepatitis B could be there. Okay, so that blood-borne virus they can get from it. Okay, gastroenteritis, if the patient is coming with the cramping pain and diarrhea, so Campylobacter and the Salmonella typhi you have to think of. Usually, like they causes if a patient if they give you a scenario that the patient went to a party and 6 hour later they have got sudden vomiting and all this, so this is early toxic syndrome, and this basically this is the food poisoning or the gastroenteritis. It is caused by the staphylococcus and streptococcus exotoxins. Okay, exotoxics, and their exotoxins usually irritates gut, and they act as enterotoxins. Okay, sometimes they will find question that there more antibiotics and diarrhea after that. So organism you already know from your previous guideline, it is Clostridium difficile only. Okay, now zoonotic infections, you just read it for one time. Too much questions are not asked. If a person is taking unpasteurized milk, uncooked or curd meat, then they are exposed to the animal with diarrhea. They are exposed to birthing animals or washing clothes of the animal handlers, then usually these kind of infection they can happen. They can have salmonella typhi infection, listeria, salmonella. Apart from this, q fever is there, that is caused by coaxella. Apart from this, chlamydiophilia is there, that can be very rapidly fatal in the pregnancy. But too much question from here usually not there. Okay, so I, though it is hard to remember everything, but I have kind of put that underline. That part you should remember, because just they give a scenario, and usually the answer will come from here. Okay, again if there a history of multi-resistant organism is there, usually infection will be with ESBL containing organism or CP production organism, or methicillin resistant state of MRSA. Apart from this, vancomycin resistance enterococci could be there. So when the so much resistant organ or infection is there with the so much of resistance producing bacteria, that time there would be multi resistant organism would be there, and how to treat them would be hard for again for the people. So it is good idea to speak to the infection control team, and the patient to be kept inside room. Apart from so infection specialist should be involved in the care. Okay, now hemorrhagic rash and purpura. Meningococcal infection do have hemorrhagic rash, so you have to be aware with that. Apart from this, if any like hemorrhagic rash and purpura, so history from travel from abroad would be taken, because there could be possibility of viral hemorrhagic fever, Lassa, Ebola. Okay, so you may get question from here, so you should be aware of that. Apart from this, allergies. Now, mild rash with penicillin. If the patient says that I took antibiotic and I had nausea and vomiting, then it was just an intolerance, not allergy. Okay. Now, if the patient says mild rash with penicillin, then 1 to 3% chance of cross reaction with cephalosporins and carbapenems. Okay, because this basic antibiotic is penicillin, that is the beta lactam, and this cephalosporin again, these are the additional, the a higher version of that. So if the mild rash with penicillin is there, maybe 1 to 3% chance of the cross reaction may be there. If a patient has got anaphylaxis with penicillin, like they have got kind of severe allergy, In that situation, even the cephalosporin and the carbapenem should not be given. Other antibiotic can be given. Before that, speak to infection disease specialist. So what other antibiotic can be given will be the erythromycin, clindamycin, and vancomycin. This part is very very important. And like even it is too much necessary for part 2 people and part 3, because mostly your role player will have allergy with the penicillin, and you have to kind of ask for the severity of allergy, and you have to kind of give them alternate. So please remember this part very nicely. Now, after the infection history and the infection symptoms and probability that what could have caused the infection, when the patient comes to us, we and we have done all our red flags and the amber flags, then we have to kind of investigate the person. And what kind of investigation? So these are the investigations that the guideline says. So routine blood test, full blood count, coagulation screen, urea electrolyte, liver function test, CRP, and like blood gases and lactate. Apart from this, blood cultures are taken, blood check cultures are taken. Blood culture is a key investigation. Two sets are taken prior to antibiotic administration, and antibiotic treatment should be started without even waiting for that. Okay. If HSV infection is suspected, then PCR can be taken. Now, um, serum lactate to be managed. As we already know that the serum lactate less more than 2, it is a red flag. And apart from this, if it is more than 4, then like it is a kind of patient is going to the severe kind of sepsis. In that situation, the critical care team should be involved. So the serum lactate 4 means a very severe sepsis, and the critical care team to be informed. Now we have to look for the source of infection. How we would do that? A chest x-ray we can do for the chest pathology. If we are suspecting any intra-abdominal abscess or pelvic abscess, consideration for USG or CT scan can be done. Apart from this, if any other focus of infection is there in the body, sample can be taken from that. Virological testing, even the COVID and COVID testing for COVID to be done. Women have got tonsillitis, should be throat swab will be taken for gas. And if MRSA status is not known, then they can take pre-motion nose swab for rapid MRSA screening. Because if the MRSA organism is there, then whatever the treatment we are going to offer is not going to be effective. Okay, so this is the update of the investigations when the woman comes with the sepsis according to this guideline. Now, so lactate more than 2, immediate senior review and IV fluids. So because it is a red flag sign. If it is more than 4, then it is a severe sepsis because of the tissue hypoperfusion, and like metabolic dysfunction is there. So escalation to the immediate or urgent treatment to be done. CRP level can rise with the bacterial sepsis, thrombus, post surgery, and but they are not very rarely they will rise with the viral infection. So as we already know, in your scenario, CRP is there, but CRP is, it is not only rising with the sepsis, with post surgery, with thrombus, it can also rise, and usually not rise with the viral infection. Okay, so when they give you investigations, you have to kind of see it overall picture. So what could be the reason? Now PCT or procalcitonin, it helps in differentiating from viral infections in from bacterial from viral, because this PCT level, they will rise in bacterial infections, they will not rise in viral infection. Okay, and thrombocytosis, like if high platelet count you see and rising CRP and swinging pyrexia, then that indicates there is a collection of pus or infected hematoma. This combination is very common for your question, both for part 2 and part 3. And people do make mistake, they are unable to like they will give you a scenario where they will give the thrombocytosis picture, raise CRP, and swinging pyrexia is kind of a keyword. that usually helps the collection of pus on infected hematoma. So please, part 2 or part 3 people, identify this so that you diagnose it well, so your answer would be right. Now, bacteriology samples. So ideally, two cultures are taken, uh, like one set for aerobic and one set for anaerobic bottle, and immediately taken within minutes of each other. A person has got normal CRP and we are suspecting viral infection. So, influenza and COVID nasal swab, viral swab can be taken. If the diarrhea is there, then like a routine stool culture for Salmonella Campylobacter and test it, because sometimes they could be prolonged antibiotic therapy. So, testing for Clostridium difficile toxin could be done. Apart from this, if the patient gives you an history of taking soft cheese or cured meats, Listeria monocytogenes infection could be there. If it is foreign travel, parasites, malaria, typhoid, cholera, viral hemorrhagic fever, brucella could be there. If the patient gives you a history of prolonged hospitalization, then multi-drug resistant organism screening to be there. So these are some clues that helps in putting the investigations for the patient and in your clinical life also. But that these this way, when the scenario is given, you'll be able to close to the diagnosis also. Okay, so for influenza, they take PCR, nasal or throat swab for PCR, and apart from this, for HSV infection, they also take viral swab for PCR. So, if any influenza or HSV is usually suspected, they will take viral swab, usually for PCR. Okay, so till that time now, till now I have covered the what could be the symptoms, what could be the risk factors, what could be the causative organism, what could be the presentation, and what could be the investigation. Till now, anyone of you have got any question? Any question, people? No. Okay. So, what are the triggers for involvement of other specialities? Like if if the senior clinician, senior midwife directly involved in the escalation of care within 1 hour of deterioration, this usually happens if the patient has got amber flag signs. Apart from this, multidisciplinary approach to be there, and critical care team should be involved. Now, managing the sepsis. So now these are the this could be asked in the exam. This is the surviving sepsis campaign 1 hour bundle of care. That means these are the steps to be taken and to be done within 1 hour. Okay, so what is that? Measurement of lactate level, obtaining blood cultures. It has to be done before giving antibiotics. At wide spectrum antibiotics are given, then rapid administration of crystalloid, like 30 ml per kilogram crystalloid, for hypotension, or if the lactate level is more than 4. If the lactate level is for more than 4, that denotes the organ dysfunction and tissue hypoperfusion. So rapid administration of 30 ml per kilogram of crystalloid is required. Apart from this, if they are not able to maintain blood pressure more than 65 millimeter of mercury, then they will add vasopressors. All no, they will add vasopressors also. So these are the components for the 1 hour bundle of care. All of you, like part 2 and part 3 people, it is necessary that you should know. Part 2 people will know it, just these values are not required, but part 2 people every value is required. And if initial lactate is elevated, they want to know it more, so they will repeat the test within 1 hour. Okay, so this is surviving Sepsis campaign, 1 hour bundle of care elements. And let me repeat it again: measurement of lactate level, obtaining blood culture, administering broad spectrum antibiotic, fluid administration, 30 ml per kilogram of body weight crystalloid, and applying vasopressors. Apart from this, this is kind of sepsis 6 protocol. Now sepsis 6 protocol also, these are the 6 component. And so like what they say, ensure the senior clinical attendants that we have seen prior also, oxygen to be given if the oxygen saturation is less than 92%. And what should be our aim? Our aim to be to get the oxygen saturation of 94 to 98%. Then IV access, blood taken for culture, and blood glucose, full blood count, lactate, urea electrolyte, CRP, clotting profile, lumbar puncture if it is required. Okay, antibiotic, broad spectrum, after allergy check, consideration for antiviral according to the scenario. IV fluid 20 ml per kilogram, less than 16 years, of age 500 ml if more than 16 years. And then lactate is a marker for organ perfusion, using the lactate guide accordingly. 6 is the monitoring with the Meo's monitoring chart, urine output hourly by putting urine catheter and repeat the lactate. So red flags after 1 hour, escalate to the consultant. Okay, so this is the sepsis 6 the protocol. So all components are necessary, and then that you guys should be aware of it. And yeah, it is important for both part 2 and part 3 people. Now this part I have already spoken. Now antibiotics, this is important to know. Now what they say according to this guideline, combination, if the life threatening sepsis or the severe sepsis is there, then combination of piperacillin or tazobactam or meropenem for gram negative plus clindamycin for gram positive and anaerobic organism, they provide the wide cover, but the local guideline has to be followed. So this would be, now this would be the widest coverage, or the broad spectrum. Okay, so piperacillin or meropenem, one of them, plus clindamycin. Okay, so this you should remember, because sometimes they will ask you this in the question. I have put the picture that give you visual memory. If the patient if it gives history of MRSA, then vancomycin is advisable. If the MRSA is there, then you will add vancomycin. Now if the patient is having if there is a change in antibiotic is considered because of deterioration despite first line treatment, then addition of IV acyclovir 500 milligram 8 hourly as a part of second line regimen. This part was not never mentioned in the previous guideline, so this part you should remember. I put the picture accordingly, and the regular clinical review is required. So this part would be, this name of antibiotics would be necessary for both part 2 and part 3 people, because I already said in sepsis scenarios they are coming every exam of part 3. Now some question: which of the following is not an indication for ICU admission in sepsis? Any anyone can answer? Any guess? No one want to speak? Okay. So hyperthermia. Okay, because it usually the hypothermia. So these are the indication of transfer to ICU. So these are the cardiovascular indications, that the hypotension is there, and raising a serum lactate more than 4 millimole per liter, requiring resuscitation or vasopressor. Respiratory, if there is a mechanical ventilation or pulmonary edema or need for airway protection. Renal, if any renal replacement therapy or dialysis is required. Decreased neurological consciousness level. Miscellaneous uh, uncorrected acidosis, multi organ failure, hypothermia. Then this is the antibiotic list. Some of them, some of a part, you should be aware of it, but everything nobody can remember it. So like coamoxiclav, usually it is effective against streptococcus and staphylococcus. And apart from this, metronidazole, we already know it covers anaerobes. So like if any uh, usually this amoxiclav, it is usually not given to the pregnant woman because it causes necrotizing enterocolitis in the babies. So usually we know that this amoxiclav is not given in the pregnant woman. Okay. Apart from this, like the widest antibiotic that we are using is piperacillin and tazobactam plus clindamycin. But consideration for a cefotaxime can also be done if the patient has got non-severe allergy. It would be necessary to know about clindamycin. Too much I'm not speaking. Clindamycin is the medication, is the kind of antibiotic that covers staphylococci, MRSA. Apart from this, it is the antibiotic that switch off oxytocin production. Now we just read that the streptococcus and staphylococcus, there is exotoxin production. Because of that, they causes so much severe infection. So we offer in the treatment part, we are giving them clindamycin. Why? Because it covers anaerobes, it covers the MRSA, it covers anaerobes, it switches off oxytocin production from streptococcus and staphylococcus, and it is not nephrotoxic also. So because of that, the clindamycin is kind of a drug of choice. But what could happen with clindamycin? There could be increased chance of superinfection with the Clostridium difficile, so the patient will develop antibiotic induced diarrhea. Okay. So about the clindamycin, this part would be necessary for you guys to know. It can come in the question. Apart from this, so wider spectrum, what we were using is piperacillin and tazobactam. So they are effective with a gram positive and gram negative, and but they have no effect on MRSA. But we are giving this along with the clindamycin. So clindamycin will cover MRSA. It is renal sparing, it doesn't affect kidney, but it has got poor activity to the ESBL producing coliforms. So and the piperacillin and tazobactam should not be given if the patient has got beta lactam allergy, or beta lactam, that means the penicillin group allergy is there. Now coming to cephalosporin and ceftriaxone, basically it covers streptococci, and it should not be used with a beta lactam allergy. There is an increased risk of Clostridium difficile infection. Now, carbapenems, they are effective against they cover most of the. They have got broad cover, covers gram negative, covers gram positive, but they will not cover those who are CPE resistance. Okay, they will not cover who are CPE resistance. Gentamicin covers gram negative, that we already know. Gentamicin also nephrotoxic because it is a aminoglycosides, and also it causes otoxicity, that we already know. in from our undergraduate days, we know that the gentamicin or the aminoglycoside has got nephrotoxic and ootoxic activity. Vancomycin covers MRSA. So if you find in your question the patient has got MRSA, like a positive bacteria infection, then vancomycin will be the like a treatment of choice. But a serum level of vancomycin has to be monitored, because there is possibility of renal toxicity and ootoxicity. Because apart from this, too rapid infusion, if it is done in vancomycin, it will cause Redman syndrome. Why? Because there is excessive histamine releases there. Okay, so vancomycin can cause too rapid infusion can cause Redman syndrome. I know it is a kind of a theory only, hardly anything to explain, but still many of the question will come from carbapenems and also gentamicin, their side effects, and also from the vancomycin. Now, intravenous immunoglobulins, it should be considered as a treatment for gram-positive necrotizing infections, toxic shock when the other measures are falling. Now, if the patient, you have given all kind of treatments and the patient is not improving, then intravenous immunoglobulins are given. Usually, they are administered in the critical care with a blood warming device. Main contraindication for intravenous immunoglobulin use is congenital immunoglobulin A deficiency. It can, why we are giving that? Because it is neutralizing the circulating exotoxins that is usually produced by the staph and staphylococcus and streptococcus, and also other super antigens. So this many of the time in your in question your questions, even the IV intravenous immunoglobulin is the answer. Any question, people? No question. Okay, now if the pregnant woman having sepsis, then what, how the baby should be monitored, and what should be the mode of birth? There are so many part 3 scenarios related to this. Basically, if the woman is critically ill, then the birth has to be expedited. Okay, if the baby is preterm, magnesium sulfate and steroid can be given. During intrapartum period, if the patient with the sepsis going for delivery, expedition of birth is there, CTG monitoring to be done, and the patient to be explained that there could be risk of neonatal encephalopathy and cerebral palsy because of intrauterine infection. Chorioamnitis, intrauterine infection with live baby and with the dead baby. There are many common scenarios that comes in part 3 exam. Now, sepsis in labor, neonatal issues. So if the patient has sepsis, the baby would be required, if babies of the woman treated for sepsis during labor or within 24 hour after birth, they would require complete assessment. Okay, gas and PVL producing S aureus infection, they can transmit it to babies during birth and also during breastfeeding. Because of that, if a woman has got gas infection, antibiotic prophylaxis to be given to the babies also. So this question has been asked many times. The woman has gas infection, so baby should also get antibiotic prophylaxis. Now, what are the postnatal issues? When the woman has postnatally, they have sepsis, it should be treated aggressively, and close household contact to be warned if they have got any symptom with the sepsis. They warrant antibiotic prophylaxis. What does it mean? When the patient is having like sepsis or infection in the postnatal period, and the identified organism is gas, so, and she's going home, so this information to be given to the family members that if they contact if they have got any kind of symptoms from the infection, they should come to the GP for antibiotic prophylaxis. Some advices that to be given to prevent the spread, like avoiding contamination of perineum by washing hands before and after using the pads or towels. Hygiene should be maintained, and like any woman, a family member having any symptom, sore throat, impetigo, scarlet fever, they should see the hospital or GP for antibiotics. This was given in the previous guideline also. Apart from this, gas and MRSA, they are transmitted by the hands of healthcare worker. So close monitoring in the healthcare worker and also household contact would be required. Women having gas infection, she should be taken care by the people when they should use protective clothing, a mask, and they should be in the single room with the ensuite facility so that contamination and spread to the other people is not there. This is the SOFA score. This was previously given in the talk with the sepsis, but now they have put in the guideline also. So basically, no one can remember this. You should know the name only. That sequential organ failure assessment score is the SOFA score, and they have given certain like respiratory, coagulation, liver, cardiovascular, neurological, renal. Some criterias are given, and according to that threshold, they have given the score 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if a total score of 2 or more associated with the organ dysfunction and sepsis, so basically like this is kind of score that helps in like finding out how much the organs are getting affected because of the infection or sepsis. This again about the antibiotic spectra that they have given, and I'm sure nobody can remember this. So sepsis, a summary from the this summary is from the strategy. So these are the risk factors for sepsis, but I won't be repeating it again because we have already read from the guideline has beautifully divided the factors in like obstetric factors and the maternal factors. This could be the symptoms of sepsis, so that we have read already, but the patient can present with the vomiting, diarrhea, pain, tachycardia, rash, discharge, cough, urinary symptom, tachypnea, and pyrexia. This could should be the treatment. So treatment part, what could be done in 1 hour, and what could be done in what is the sepsis 6 that I have already spoken. But yeah, this is a formulated answer if they ask you in part 3. This is the sepsis 6, what could be done immediately within 1 hour, and what could be done within 6 hours. This I have put everything here. So if they ask you in your part 3, how would you manage sepsis? So this you can explain nicely. Okay, apart from this choriomanitis, now choriomanitis has become very important these days because part 3 scenario, too much of the choriomanitis is coming. Okay, recent exam there had been a choriomanitis scenario. So these are the risk factor for choriomanitis that you have to take in the history: prolonged labor, multiple per vaginal examination, nulliparity, previous infection, alcohol, tobacco use, meconium stained liquor, internal monitoring, and epidural. Apart from this, this could be the implication for the mother: increased chance of cesarean, endometritis, abscess, bacteremia, sepsis, DIC, ARDS, and death, very rare. Neonatal implication will be early onset sepsis, perinatal death, asphyxia, pneumonia, and IVH. So these are the clinical diagnosis of choriomanitis: maternal tachycardia, pyrexia, uterine tenderness, offensive vaginal discharge, and fetal tachycardia. And choriomanitis is an indication for delivery. So broad spectrum antibiotic, paracetamol, hydration, fluid, sending investigations, and basically expedition of birth. Okay. So many confusing scenarios for choriomanitis do come. This is the summary for necrotizing fasciitis. As I already told that the people in the exam, they miss the diagnosis of necrotizing fasciitis. So because of that, they're unable to give the answer. So usually, like it is, there could be, in early stages, the patient will present with a pain that is out of proportion. So initially there would be blisters. Later on, there could be, usually there is edema and thrombus to the arterial supply. Later there could be bruising, blister, and finally necrosis happens. Okay, and if the bruising, necrosis, blister, bluish blackish margin they gave in the task, usually it will be necrotizing fasciitis, and this is the answer. This part 3, people should know very nicely. Urgent multidisciplinary approach, involvement of plastic surgeon, barrier intensivist and infection specialist, barrier nursing to be instituted, because otherwise there would be spread of infection. The wide spectrum antibiotic, we already know that it is piperacillin, tazobactam or meropenem plus clindamycin, because it covers most of the bacteria to be given. Apart from this, if MRSA is suspected, we already know for MRSA the vancomycin is the antibiotic of choice. Once the infection is controlled, the person has to be taken to theater, because a surgical debridement would be necessary. So in this situation, so this is the management for the necrotizing fasciitis and the presenting features necessary for both part 2 and part 3 people. That's all I had to say. Any one of you have got any question can ask me. Otherwise, I have just keep few small questionnaire for you. Any question? Any question? Any question? No question. Okay. Now only I will take 10 more minutes. Very less questions I have kept. So now this is a scenario. The 28-year-old woman presented at 30 weeks with fever, flank pain, palpitation. She is febrile with pulse rate of 100 beat per minute, blood pressure of 100 by 60. She has diffuse tenderness over abdomen, non-tender uterus, vaginal examination is normal, fetal heart is 200. So what could be the management plan for the patient? Anyone want to try? Okay. So the patient, now the the clues that you have for you: patient is having fever, flank pain, palpitation, tachycardia, diffuse tenderness. So the patient is going towards kind of a sepsis, maybe because of the urinary cause. So what we should so patient is critically ill. So the patient should be ideally admitted in HDU, and antibiotic and the hydration. Basically, this is the escalation of care, and also your sepsis 6 protocol thing. Now, the patient is 36 weeks with a pre-labor rupture of membrane, temperature of 40, hypotension. She has got macular rash uh, with a history of vomiting and diarrhea. Blood level, creatinine is raised. So, what is the single additional feature that would confirm that it is a clear picture for the staphylococcal toxic shock? Any answer? No answer. So answer is the desquamation of the palm and sole, and this is the picture. Okay. So desquamation of the palm and sole occurs, or that is a characteristic feature for your staphylococcus infection. This is again the table that denotes that what could be the symptoms of staphylococcal toxic shock. So you can see that the desquamation, 10 to 14 days after or onset of illness, especially palm and sole. Okay, and they have rash, and it is macular erythroderma. Apart from this, in streptococcus toxic shock syndrome, rash will happen only in 10% of the cases. Okay, it will happen in 10% of the cases. This is also the question that many of the time is asked. Here, the patient is 36 weeks, and she attends the unit because of the decreased fetal movement. CTG observations are fine. Now, these are the findings given. Now, here the organism is GBS, and colony count is 10 raised to 4 and or 10 raised to power 5 per ml. And now the patient has got no symptoms. Now, clue to this question: the patient is asymptomatic, and she is having bacteria in the urine. So this is the picture of asymptomatic bacteriuria. Okay, so if the asymptomatic bacteriuria is there, so right now there would be no treatment, but this patient would require uh, like IAP, or when she's in the labor, that time antibiotic, intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis she would require. Now, the 26-year-old woman having pyelonephritis, and she is having ESBL producing organism. Watch what antibiotic to be commenced. So ESBL, what to be given? That is the um, meropenem or carbapenem. So this is already given in your guideline only, that the carbapenem would have a wide cover. It would cover most of the ESBL producing organism anaerobes. So answer is carbapenem, because the bacteria here is ESBL producing. Apart from this, now here the patient is 6 days postpartum. She has sore throat, and she has gas infection. She is suspected that toxic shock syndrome. Which antibiotic to be used to switch off oxytocin? So I just told you people that one antibiotic is there that will cause switching off of the exotoxin or endotoxin. That is a clindamycin. So this part I have already explained you, that clindamycin covers most of the gas. It covers most of the MRSA. It switch off exotoxin production. It is not renal excreted, or it is not nephrotoxic. Usually, the clindamycin is present in form of the IV antibiotic, or it is present in form of the capsules also. Now the patient develops sepsis 2 days after cesarean section. She is having MRSA. Which antibiotic to be used? For MRSA, it is always vancomycin. So this is from the guideline. Vancomycin covers MRSA. Okay. MRSA has to be given. Now, patient in labor for 38 gestation, vaginal swab shows GBS prophylaxis. GBS in culture, she is allergic to penicillin. So, if she is allergic to penicillin, what antibiotic has to be given? So, antibiotic given has to be vancomycin. Why? Because if the patient has got allergy to penicillin, so cephalosporins cannot be given. And if you go your GBS guideline, they will say penicillin. After that, they will say cephalosporin. But if the cephalosporin can not be given, then they will give vancomycin. And this vancomycin is usually, according to your GBS guideline, 1 gram IV BD is given. Okay, so L is the answer. Now here the patient has got diarrhea with a Clostridium difficile. So if the diarrhea with a Clostridium difficile is there, then it is now vancomycin is the treatment of choice. And when the difficile diarrhea is there, in that situation, we would give oral vancomycin, not IV, because vancomycin is not absorbed orally. So always we give IV unless we are treating Clostridium difficile infection. Now you can see there, see that in previous question, Here we were giving and uh, IV vancomycin because we wanted treatment for GBS. Okay. Now, if you see this question, we want treatment for Clostridium difficile. So, because of that, we have to give oral vancomycin. So, because in difficile, if the Clostridium difficile infection is there, only oral vancomycin would be affected. Okay. This gives the answer to that. Now, a 30-year-old woman having a 5-day history of offensive discharge, temperature is 38. What could be the infective organism in this case? We already know it has to be gas, so it is Streptococcus pyogenes. Now, which of the clinical criteria are, are indicative of diagnosis of septic shock? So these are uh, the criterias you have. So hypotension require vasopressor therapy and oligouria. Hypotension require vasopressor therapy and serum lactate more than 2 millimole. WBC count and pyrexia. So answer should be from above 2 only. So it is hypotension requiring vasopressor therapy and serum lactate more than 2 millimole. Okay. So this is the clinical definition for the septic shock. Previously also I have given the same definition. Though septic shock affects the many all organs, causes organ dysfunction, it causes oliguria also, but it is not among the clinical criteria to diagnose septic shock. Now, a patient is presented to maternity triage. She's having flu-like symptoms, pyrexia, and she is having a greenish liquor. So, patient has got she visited the family farm. So that means family farm, that is a clue here. The patient has got some kind of that curd, cheese, something like that, and greenish like are only occur in one organism, that is Listeria monocytogenes. So the listeriosis is the answer. Apart from this, 28-year-old woman having GBS, and she's currently pregnant. Two cesarean sections are there. Now she is planned for the third cesarean. What should we do? Now here, though the patient is having a GBS, but we, as the patient is planned for cesarean section, that means the membrane will not be ruptured, so there is no increased risk of neonatal infection. So we will not be giving the patient like any intrapartum antibiotic. So answer would be no treatment required. Okay, as our membranes are intact and the vaginal delivery is not planned, so prophylaxis for antibiotic intrapartum is not required. Now, a primi gravida, the patient has been treated with 29 weeks of gestation. GBS finding is there when the swab is performed. So, and what could be the most appropriate intrapartum management? Answer you already know from your guideline, and this is the benzyl penicillin. This is the basically GBS prophylaxis. Intrapartum management usually started with the onset of labor. So benzyl penicillin 3 gram loading dose IV. Then we give 1.45 milligrams for hourly till the patient delivers. Now, a female infant is born at 36 weeks, and her mother has a a rupture of membrane. The mother developed 38 degree Celsius temperature, and the baby is lethargic, not feeding well. What is the etiology? GBS, we already know that it will be early onset. Early onset because the symptoms are there within 7 days. Okay, because of that, it is early onset. So, early onset, group B, Streptococcus disease. Okay, that's it about this guideline and the questionnaire. Whatever, I'll try to kind of make it easy for you. Hope it helps. Any one of you have got any question can ask me. Otherwise, uh, uh, all the best and thank you for joining. Anyone any question? Anyone any question? Okay. All the best, people. Thanks for joining. Bye.